Everybody, welcome, welcome. I have my beautiful daughter Thacia with me today. And oftentimes we get on the phone and we have such fabulous and amazing conversations that we decided we wanted to start doing some podcasts and let's just chatting podcasts. So we're going to talk and we're going to see what shows up. And if we think it's good enough to put on YouTube, like there's some information and some value there, then what we're going to do is we're going to post it. And if not, then we won't be showing you those videos. So, okay, Thacia, so you were mentioning to me a little bit that you've been thinking a lot about judgment versus compassion and how that plays out in your life and the choice around judgment versus compassion. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to go into just a little bit of um, what are you noticing in those moments? First off, how have you been catching yourself in the judgment? Like what process have you done, if any kind of a process? Like, because there's been times in your life where you're like, I can't seem to remember, mom, to go to compassion or to go
Yeah.
to kindness, right? There's just so much judgment and I don't even know how to remind myself. So maybe we start there and go, how
Uh,
do you how did you go from where you were to where you are now and
right.
start to catch yourself in the judgment, right? Because first what I notice is people will just go off on their judgments and they'll just go and go and go and go and never do anything to interrupt that pattern, and that pattern has to be interrupted if we want to have some success. So I'm curious if you remember what that leap was for you, or maybe it wasn't even a leap, maybe it was just an action or a desire or something that occurred for you to take you
Yeah.
from judgment to where you wanted, or where you started catching yourself in the judgment enough to be able to change your mind or make a different choice.
Yeah. That's actually an excellent question. I think it was just because I felt like I had a hard time with love, like the feeling of love. So that's where compassion comes in, right? So
Yeah.
you've always been like, well, just love yourself. Well, just love yourself. And I'm like, first off, what the hell is love? And how do I like that's corny, right? I'm like, self love, what? So compassion is actually the easier feeling to feel for myself, which is huge. So I'll be like,
Easier feeling than love.
then love for sure. It almost feels like a hug rather than like just accepting something right off the bat, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
like if I am judging myself for doing something, there that love won't be there. Whereas I catch myself, oh, I'm judging myself for that. It's easier to go, okay, I know understand I'm human. I'm going to give myself compassion in this moment instead of instant love. So it can be a form of love, obviously.
Right,
Compassion,
right.
that's the way I like to use it, is like a companion. Um, so the way that I discovered that difference for me is I felt heavy all the time. And I still do this, where I still catch myself like, oh, I get to give myself compassion more than I get to judge myself right now. I feel like what is the word? The baseline or whatever, like the habit that we're in is first judgment. It's almost
Hmm.
like you get to switch that, right? So it's like you can be taking all of these actions out of judgment and you won't even know. It just feels heavy, or it feels like everything sucks, or I'm hating my life, or I'm not looking forward to something, or I have to do this, I shouldn't be doing that, right? All of that feels like it's very borderline judgment.
Hmm.
And when I caught that, I'm like, oh, interesting. Everything is coming off as judgment. Everything feels like judgment. If it's not coming from a space of acceptance or love or compassion, it feels like it's a little bit more on the negative side. Judgment. It just feels like a heavier self hate almost, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not going to say that if you're not loving yourself, you're hating yourself, because I don't know that that's true. But sometimes that's what it feels like. It's like, hey, if I'm not actually giving myself that compassion in whatever action I'm taking or whatever thought I'm feeling, I feel judgment. I feel judgment from myself. And it's not just other people, but it's, oh, I am not doing this good enough. I'm feeling judgment, or I'm being dumb in this area, I feel judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll try to catch that. I'll be like, okay, I'm immediately judging myself right now. So the way to change that around is to be like, it's okay to feel that way. I understand that I feel that way. I understand that's the baseline, right? It's not, don't feel judgment, don't feel judgment, don't feel judgment, because that's just gonna like reinitiate
Yeah.
that, right?
That's judging your judgment.
Exactly.
Right. And
You're
so it
doing
just
that
keeps
wrong. Don't you dare judge.
it keeps the cycle going because we're just doing the same thing. And then, like
Mhm.
you were saying before, the compassion is trying to come from a place of judgment. And compassion has to come
Yeah.
from compassion, and judgment, well, judgment will come from judgment, right? But if your actions are
Right.
coming from judgment, they're not going to be as beneficial as if your actions are coming from compassion. So even if you're
Exactly.
trying to bring some acceptance to it, doing it from a place of, okay, I can never judge again. I can't
Mhm.
do this. There's, I'm not going to allow myself. That's just loading on more judgment and shame upon yourself, which actually tends to backfire. And that's not love. You
Exactly.
can't love from a foundation of judgment, which is what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That is so accurate. So if you can accompany that judgment with compassion,
Mm-hmm.
it starts to alter things for you a little bit, right? So as I am learning the self-love road,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like loving myself accept means that I accepted bad parts, and that didn't feel right. Right? It was just like, oh, well, I'm just allowing myself to be a piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
Whereas instead, I'm watching myself be that judgment. Be that judgment, feel that judgment. It could be it, I guess, but I'll be in that, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand. And there's maybe some core wounds and some childhood stuff going on there, and I'll be like, I understand that this is something I'm going through, and that's okay. Instant compassion right there. There's that instant acceptance. It's like, oh, I'm okay to be judging myself right now, right? That
Right.
that acceptance, that compassion immediately softens that judgment. And you're not
Mm,
wanting to get rid of that judgment because, like you said, that's not what we're trying to do here. So if you can accept that and where you're at, and maybe accompany it with compassion or
mm.
love. I do it with compassion because love still feels like it's like accepting the bad things or whatever. So compassion's my second favorite, right? I'll accompany it so the judgment isn't as doom and gloom.
Yeah. What I love about this is it feels like you have built a bridge for yourself. So
I
that
like that.
like the way you saw it was, especially because I've been talking about self-love for how many years of your life,
Forever.
a good portion of them. And in the beginning you'd go, that's stupid, mom, I don't want to have anything to do with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
suspect it's because you saw what I was sharing with you as too big of a leap, right?
Yeah.
And that you
Yeah.
had to do it all perfect.
Yeah,
And
that's huge.
and coming from the place of I got to do it perfect. I can't have judgment. I can't have this. I can't have that, right? I can't do all these things. Therefore, why even go there? That's dumb. And then I'm sure there's a part of it there, and I experience this with a lot of people, is they'll go, love, almost like it's this
Corny.
like fluff.
Yeah.
Like love is
Yeah.
fluff and it's
Yeah.
kind of useless.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's how I experienced it with you, is like, no, this piece of love is such a transformative treasure. I felt like I was handing
Mhm.
you gold and you're going, what? That's
Huh?
fluff.
Yeah.
Why would
Yeah.
I want that?
Yeah.
Right. And so then as you've grown up and aged, and you can now study these things on your with yourself, you're right. You're not just hearing mom's words. You're studying
Mm-hmm.
these things yourself, and you're coming back and you're going, oh, here's the bridge I needed, mom. Right.
Yes.
And the bridge you needed was
Yes.
is to meet, at least the best of my understanding, is to meet the judgment with compassion, what you're calling compassion, which is more like, oh, it's absolutely okay that I'm judging. It's all right. And then you're with the judgment, and you can now observe the judgment, be with the judgment with from a different place than trying to just do away with the judgment. right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then what I'm seeing from there is that's let's see how I can say it. Okay, here's what I want to say. What I've been inviting people into, which is interesting, is the same exact thing from my perspective. This is why I think two different perspectives are so vital and important. Well, everybody, a lot of different perspectives,
Yeah.
because it can broaden people's mind because we all do things so different. So,
Mm-hmm.
what I've been guiding people to do is to bring whatever the issue is, right? And then bring the love. So, for me, it's the feeling of love to it, right? And when you bring the two together, then it transforms. But you're not bringing love to transform the judgment, or you're still in judgment, right? You're still in judgment. You go, judgment is bad and it's wrong and blah, 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 blah. And you're not solving the problem. So if you bring the two together in the same environment, then that's when you can begin to unwind and unhook the initial judgment, right? That you
Yep.
can never, never,
Exactly.
never, never unwind a judgment by judging it,
Exactly.
ever.
Exactly.
And yet we try,
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time we try, and then we fail because that's not even possible. We're human beings. We're always going to have judgment.
Yeah.
Probably as long as
I'm
we're in
gonna
this
heal
body.
myself because I'm crap. That's not gonna help.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. So I love your piece and the way you bring the compassion to sit with the judgment instead of trying to do away with anything. You're sitting with the judgment and you're in a compassionate place, understanding, listening to yourself, being with yourself in such a way that it begins to melt the judgment, right?
Doesn't
Because
make
I
it
don't
so
I
big.
don't know if we can actually make judgment go away,
No.
but we can be with ourselves from a loving and conscious place, and that begins
Mm-hmm.
to unwind the judgment, which is what I'm hearing you talk about, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
power of that, I wouldn't mind chatting a little bit about that. At
Yeah.
more of a scientific, well, I don't know how scientific it is, but an energy depends on if science has discovered it all, right? But an energetic place, what's going on at an energetic level is that judgment has its own frequency, right? And so if we're coming at judgment with more judgment, we're adding to that
Mm,
same vibration, that same energetic
yeah.
frequency. We're literally
Yeah.
adding to it. Even if what we're doing is like, okay, I'm going to muster up this love and I'm going to like project the love onto the judgment, right? In in order to make that judgment go away. That's just
Yeah.
more judgment. We're going to actually enhance the judgment.
Yeah.
So on the opposite end, what you're doing, what I'm seeing you're doing, and what I've been inviting people to do for a long time is to take the judgment, be aware of the judgment, and when you observe the judgment, now you're bringing the level of conscious frequency, which is much higher frequency than judgment, and then you bring in, oh, listening, I hear you, I see you, I understand. Yes, you're human. There's compassion, there's space, right? All of those are a higher frequency energy than trying to fix the judgment. I'm a bad person, right? And so whenever you bring a higher frequency in with a lower frequency, the stronger the, okay, let's say it this way. There's a law of the universe, and it's called the law of resonance. And it states that only energy of similar frequency can reside in the same place at the same time. So if you have judgment frequency and you put more judgment on it, those are the same frequencies. They can totally reside in the same place at the same time. But if you bring in compassion, understanding, listening, observing, just observing the story will shift it, excuse me, the judgment. Just observing the judgment will change it because observation, you're bringing your full presence. When you observe, you bring your full presence. And when you bring your full presence, that's a higher frequency. And that higher frequency will literally go and start melting the judgment away.
Mm.
I don't know that we actually ever can make ourselves not judge. We can only bring a higher frequency and allow the judgment to dissipate on its own.
So allowing it to dissipate on its own. How do you ask this? Not getting rid of it. How is that not getting rid of it?
Because your only job is to be with it.
Yeah.
Be in a loving space with it, right? We are not the alchemists. Love and presence are the alchemists. That's what changes everything. So we're not actually going in and we're not actually changing the judgment. We're bringing our love and our presence to the judgment.
Right.
And that
Right.
dissipates it. Those are the
And that,
alchemists. They're the ones that are doing the work.
right. Right.
Right?
We're not the ones actually
We're
making it
not
dissipate.
we're not the ones making it dissipate. Now we
We're
have to
just,
be willing to show up,
yeah.
right? Like we can totally join in the judgment, jump on the judgment train, right? And ride the rails with judgment forever. So when we show up from a different place and we go, okay, I want something to change. Now we have made ourselves available to do something different so that that love and that presence that we bring to the judgment can then start the transformation process for us.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about this is it really takes out the, I have to do it all right. I have to be perfect in order to make this thing change. And we don't. All we need to do is be present. Our presence transforms everything.
Being present with something like that is a whole other ballgame as well.
Well, isn't that what you've been talking about, is being present with the judgment?
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure. It is. It's definitely about being present with it. It's about an acceptance that's changing for sure. But yeah, presence in itself is a whole nother lesson and experience to be witnessed or experienced, right? Lack of not saying experience a million times. But when you say that, when you say it's just something to be present with, I'm like, oh, that's a whole nother topic that's like, how do I explain what I'm trying to say here? It's like it's more than just, okay, I'm being present with it.
Right.
To me at least, it's like there's a dance to being present, right? It's way more than just, okay, I'm being present with it. And you can just be present with it. It can be that simple. But there's a whole nother level to that, I feel like.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
That people aren't even aware of, I feel like.
Yeah. So what is presence? Maybe that's what we discuss. Like, what is presence, right? How do you bring presence to something? Really, it's no different than what you just said that you're doing and bringing compassion. It's really the same thing. It's that we put a different word to it, and then all of a sudden people have a different experience of like, what?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Presence is literally just your observation of. If I were to put a definition to the word presence, it would be to observe. Period. Whatever's going on, to observe. Bring yourself that is observing it to the equation. Now, something else I want to just briefly mention is a lot of people misunderstand focusing on versus being present with. Two radically different,
drowning in or just sitting next to.
Yes. So when you
from.
Yes. When you focus on something, your energy is like, boom. So what you focus on expands. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. What you focus on expands. And the reason it expands is because we're sending so much energy directly to it. And we are now focused on, let's say, judgment. We're focused on our judgment. And we're going, oh my goodness, I'm judging here. And we're adding to the energy. The difference when we bring presence is we're bringing an observation, and we're going, oh wow, with kind of a neutral mind, right? We're noticing, we're still noticing, but we're observing, and we're going, oh wow, you see this and you see that, and oh, I hear you, and like we literally just observe it. And the two can get mixed up pretty easily. One will enhance the energy of it and create it to be stronger, and one will start dissipating it if it's something that is of a lower frequency. Because remember, your
Mm-hmm.
presence is one of the highest frequencies. And the reason is because it comes from your being,
Mm.
from the truth of you. When we are observing with a neutral mind, it comes from the truth of our being. And that's where the highest frequency is because it's in alignment with who we are. That's the highest frequency, right? And it's probably why love is such a high frequency too, is because it so aligns with the truth of our being. Those two frequencies, whenever we add them to something, begin to dissipate or unwind the other frequency. It has to rise and match. The lower frequency has to rise and match. So it's the strongest frequency that rules. So when you put two frequencies together, right, let's say judgment and love or compassion or presence, it'll be the strongest frequency that determines the outcome. And I promise that your presence and your love is stronger than judgment. Doesn't always feel that way, but it is.
No, it doesn't feel like it, but for sure. I just think that it is a basic feeling or
Okay.
experience that I go through every day if I'm not aware of it. And I don't know that everyone experiences it that way. Maybe some people are a little lighter than I am naturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not borderlining a heaviness that I feel like I experience a lot more. And I just call that heaviness judgment.
Got it.
So when I feel some days are heavier than others, it's because it's easier for me to sit in judgment, or I'm not even noticing that I'm sitting in judgment of everything. And
Yeah.
some days there's just being in that, and that's fine. Some days are just harder, but other days are amazing when I can actually catch that I'm sitting in that. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm judging myself about this. I'm judging let me see if I can come up with an example of what this judgment is.
I could probably toss out a few, then they're pretty,
What?
they could be typical for a lot of people too, not just you, okay? But
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
big one is life is hard. It shouldn't be this hard. Money's hard. Um, Things shouldn't be this hard. Therefore, like, why can't I get this? Why can't I get
yeah,
this? Why can't I
yeah.
get this? Right. And I suspect this is, and I don't know that this is yours necessarily, but I see this a lot in the people that I work with, right? It's like,
Yeah,
why can't I get this? Why can't I get this? There's something wrong,
right,
right? There's just something wrong. And then we tend to like compare ourselves with other people who are like very successful in this,
right,
or maybe they even just look
right,
successful on social media,
right,
right? We're scrolling
right,
through and we think that person's very successful, and maybe they are,
right,
right? And so then we'll compare ourselves and then we beat ourselves up, and it's like, oh, life is just too hard. Why can't I get this? Why can they get it? They're younger than me. Why are they getting it and I'm not?
right,
Right?
right. Yeah. Even the question or the sentence, why can't I get this? That feels like a heavy judgment to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it doesn't even matter what it is, why can't I get this? It could be anything. It's like I need this to go good so that I can feel up here. I'm feeling down here about this, like say it's money or a job or something. Like, oh, here we go. This is a good one. Okay, I just gotta. So I am having a hard time with my financial situation right now. I had an experience this morning that kind of bumped me up a little, and I'm like, why is it like this? What is wrong? Like, what is going on here? Something with a client didn't work out. And I'm like, immediately just felt this frustration, this anger, this upset. Like, I just want to give up. I don't even want to try anymore. Right.
Yeah.
But it's that expectation of this needs to work out so that I can feel like this
Yeah.
instead of down here. Right. But the judgment is I'm failing. I'm not doing good enough. I'm never going to be here. And if I'm not here, the judgment is I'm a piece of shit, or I'm a failure, or I'm not doing something perfectly, or I'm always going to be down here.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a thought. What's wrong with being here? And why do I need to be here? Because when we're here, we're not giving ourselves compassion. We're not giving ourselves love. We think when we're here, we're going to feel a hell of a lot more self-love and a hell of a lot more self-compassion, and things are going to flow, right? We want things to flow and feel better. But we can easily be here by, when we're here, giving ourselves that compassion and that love.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of needing things to work out perfectly so that we can be here.
Yeah.
We can be here even when things aren't working out. We can give ourselves that compassion and that love.
Yeah.
And even when things don't work out and we give ourselves that compassion and that love, we'll be here. Even when things aren't working out, right?
Right.
So that experience today, I'm like frustrated and angry, and I'm like, I'm never going to be here. I'm trying so hard to be here. When really, okay, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm sick of all this shit I'm going through. Well, okay, that's okay, right? I'm going to sit with that, and I'm going to be compassionate with this experience that I'm in. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still loved. And yeah, things are kind of bumpy right now. They will work out eventually, and maybe in different ways than I think, and that's okay. But I don't need it to be here to be able to get that compassion from myself, right? Because that's what I'm looking for. We want to be here because we're looking for that self-love, that self-compassion, that self-soothing, that self-acceptance. Like, I just need to feel okay. I don't feel okay right now. I just need to feel okay. So if I'm here, I feel okay about myself, right?
So if everything works out with this client and I get the money that I want and all that, then I'm gonna feel
I'm
this.
right here or even higher than I could imagine, right? That is
Yeah.
exactly what I was feeling actually 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I was like, I am writing. I am doing so good. I am like giving myself all this hype. Like, I'm feeling so good about myself. Maybe I can go even further than that. Then I had that experience, and I had like, and I'm like, and I'm feeling this hatred and this judgment and this like, I thought I was better than this, right?
Right. Yeah. So I suspect that this is the thing that we humans do, where we look outside of ourselves for our own happiness,
Yes.
right? We're like, okay, the
We don't
job's
even
going to
know
bring
what
us
it.
happiness, the
Yeah.
client's going to bring us happiness, the money's going to bring us happiness, the
Yeah.
and really what we're looking for when we boil it all down is some form of love and acceptance. If we have
Yeah.
money, I'll love and accept myself, or other people will love and accept me. If I can do what I want all the time every day, then there's a certain amount of we project, let's see how I can say it, we project love onto money and vice versa, right? Like if we have money, then that means I'm loved and supported and taken care of.
Right. We make that thing an object where we're going to feel love from it, sort of. That
Exactly.
makes
Or
sense.
from other people,
We
or
place that attachment and that expectation onto that. And if I don't get that, I'm not going to feel that. Right.
right. And what I think people fail to remember is that we create the love in the moment, right? We create the love for ourselves in the moment. And
Yeah.
life is just a mirror reflection of how we're
Yeah.
being with ourselves.
Yeah.
So when we're in those moments, like when you're talking about down, everything crashed and burned, and now you've got all this judgment going on, right? And if you can be in
Yeah.
a state of acceptance, compassion, being present with it,
In those
observing
moments.
it, just being with ourselves in those moments, this is the most critical time to give ourselves love. The reason
Yes.
being is because we think the love's out there, further down
Right.
the road, or maybe it's in something else or a
Right.
project or whatever. We think the love's over there, and it's not, it's right here. So then when we can
Right.
give ourselves the love in the moment, that especially when we're not
Right.
doing so well, we will start to transform that pattern, and we'll realize, oh, I can be happy regardless. I got my love regardless of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is the whole outside world starts to change because it's a mirror reflection of how we're showing up. If what I want is love, I give myself love. And it will
Yeah.
come back to us in the form of money
Yeah.
and attention and success
Yeah.
and all these kinds of things if we're willing to give it to ourselves in those moments.
Yeah, exactly. And even further, what I find is when I'm in those moments, I feel like a failure for feeling that anger and that judgment and that less than happy or less than compassionate, less than love feeling, right? So
Right.
if we can allow even that, like if we can almost pat ourselves on the back for allowing ourselves to feel that less than good in those
Yeah.
moments, instead of like, okay, well, I gotta feel all this love for myself right now because that's like the best thing right now that you can do. Well, it's like you're not wanting to push those feelings away either, right?
Right. Right.
Like what does being there for yourself look like for you? It's like that love that you like to experience, like in your body, is what I hear from you, right? Is feeling that love there. For me, it's, oh, I'm feeling hate or anger or whatever, and I like sit there with it, right?
Mhm.
So it's really important to be present with it, like you said, to observe those feelings instead of push them away. I got to feel love right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
I want what I can't have.
Absolutely. And even I do that, sweetie, where it's like,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, I don't have an emotion like anger or sadness or whatever come up and then immediately go to love. Never will do that.
Yeah, yeah,
Never, never, never. Because
yeah,
it's so easy to cover up. Well, if it's easy
yeah,
for you to feel love, it's easy to
yeah,
cover up the emotion with a feeling of love. And then it looks like the problem went away and it didn't because we didn't bring the presence to what was going on, what the truth of what was going on
yeah,
inside of us is. We've got to
yeah,
bring that presence first. And then the presence will unwind the emotion. And then you can bring the love. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
exactly. You're making friends with those uncomfortable feelings. If you can
Mm-hmm.
make friends with those uncomfortable feelings as soon as possible, you're not running from them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're not controlling you anymore.
Yeah, what actually happens, I like to use the analogy of a monster, right? Or like imagine your monster is a dragon, right? And your emotion you've been running from forever, you've perceived it as a dragon, like, oh, I can't feel fear, or else I'm going to create the same thing, right? Or I can't feel anger, I can't be whatever because of whatever fears you might have around it. I'm going to hurt somebody if I feel anger, right? Or I'm going to lash out at somebody, or I'm this or that or the other. And we turn these emotions into these big scary monsters. Well, what
Mm-hmm.
happens when we turn and we begin to face it and be present with it, we start realizing that we're a dragon rider, right? That's who we are. We are emotional beings. And when we can be with those emotions and observe them, like what we're talking about, then it's like we climb on the back of our dragon and now we have all the power of the dragon too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can
Exactly.
go, oh my goodness, I feel so angry. And then it's like, oh, this is a lot of
I'm
energy.
feeling
What do I want to
angry.
use this energy for?
Right.
Right?
Right.
What is the
Right.
anger in my body trying to tell me that I am done with? Right? How is this anger propelling me forward in life to do something I really desire to do?
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
That
Like,
these emotions aren't just here. You
right.
can use them.
Yes. In fact, all the emotions have a gift in them,
Mm.
right? And if we're running from the emotion or losing ourselves in the emotion, then we lose the gift. We don't get to receive the gift.
I feel like that's like level 5 stuff right there. I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, I haven't even gotten there yet. That's amazing. I'm like a
So
new level I haven't even thought of.
if we can start being present with the emotion, then we can start to see the gift the emotion has.
Huge.
So for an example, yeah,
Huge.
it's
Gotta
huge.
hear more on that.
So when I was in the Hendricks Institute, the Katie Hendricks, one of the teachers, she would
Yeah.
always say, on the tail of anger is your desire, right? We're only angry because
Ah,
we desire something that isn't so.
ah.
Okay. Like the only reason you feel angry about whatever occurred with this client is because there's something you desperately want. Okay. And so then
Yeah,
what
that makes sense.
happens, what often happens is people will be like, well, it didn't happen, so I guess I can't have it, and blah, 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 blah. And
Mm,
instead of going, okay, I feel angry. Oh, what is it I want? Oh my goodness, I want more money. I want life to be easier. I want, right, to be able to live my purpose and get paid for it. Whatever it is the person's wanting. And then you can go, okay, how can I use this as fuel to propel me towards that? The problem is
mm.
people tend to go to victim instead of their power, right?
Because they don't know what to do with it.
They don't know what to do with it. And because they're so in it, they're like, oh, I just feel angry and I'm not supposed to feel angry, right? But that's just
Man.
all this built up energy of anger. And so what happens is people will either feel like a victim or they'll take it out on another person, right? Or they'll take it out on themselves or they'll do
Mm,
something. What's going to happen with that big energy that's called anger? Something's got to happen with that energy. It's not just going to sit there and do nothing. It's going to, it's an energy that wants to move. It wants to go forward. It wants to create. It wants to bring your desires to you. So you can either have let it work against yourself or another person, or you
mm.
can direct it in the direction you want to go. And you can get angry and you can go, I'm done with this pattern. What can I do about it now? How do I actually go and get my dreams? How can I make this not make this? How can I use this energy to propel me forward closer to what I want? Right?
That's some huge stuff. I haven't even thought about it that way. That's incredible. We'll have to have a whole nother episode on that one because that's some rich stuff right there.
So
Yeah.
fear, sadness, jealousy, anger,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Frustration,
Yeah.
all of these emotions have gifts in them. And I would say the very first place to start is to stop looking at as emotion as bad. Emotion is not negative. We hear negative emotions and control your emotions. This isn't about control, and it's not about thinking that they're negative or that something needs to be controlled. Nothing needs to be controlled. It needs to be presenced, needs to be listened to. And then we befriend our dragon, and then we can hop on its back and we can use it to move us forward in life. Right?
I love that. Beautifully put.
Thank you. So let's talk about what's deeper than emotion is the story, right? The story that we've been talking about, the judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
All judgment is a story or a limiting mindset. And underneath every emotion is a story, is a limiting mindset. And what we've been talking about in the beginning of this was how to be with those mindsets, how to be present with it. And just as a reminder for everybody that might be watching this, when we be present with it without trying to run from the emotion, that's when it can start to shift and unwind at the core level instead of, one of my friends would say, putting frosting on a cow pie. If you're not going to be present with what is, instead you're going to go, oh, I can't feel angry. Let's feel happy. Let's feel love. Let's feel whatever because I can't get angry or I can't be afraid or I can't be whatever. Then it's like putting frosting on a cow pie. It's still going to taste like a cow pie. Maybe a little sweeter.
It looks ridiculous too.
It's going to look ridiculous. It's still going to stink. It's still not going to taste very good.
It's not
And it's
great.
definitely not going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So I'd say presence. Presence is the key to all of it, right? Presence with the emotion, which presence again is just like listening. It's observing. That's it. We can all do that.
Not drowning. Yeah.
It's that we oftentimes make up the stories about what that means about us. If I'm angry, then that means. If I'm sad, then that means, and that's where we hook ourselves. Sweet. Is there any more that you, when you look inside yourself with this upset that came up, Is there any more that wants to be talked about or looked at or addressed or supported? Do you have
I
any questions in
really,
your mind, or do you feel like, no, I got this?
um, I definitely am finding that I want to take action from it. And that's a
Nice.
whole nother thing we can talk about as well later on. Um, but I'm definitely feeling like out of anger and frustration and maybe even no, not a little, a lot of fear of not making money. I'm wanting to take some crazy, massive action from all of this, all these feelings I'm experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like having to watch that. But
So the
no,
goal would be,
I think you're breaking up. There you
yeah,
are.
the goal might be then to be very present with everything that's going on, recognize the stories, the judgments, be with them, and
Yeah,
shift into a different energy, a different state of being, right? Be so present with yourself that you can shift into a new state of being, because the new state of being is where you want to create from.
right. You don't want to create from this place that I'm in with it now. Yeah,
Even
huge.
though anger has energy and fear has
Right.
energy, you don't actually want to take the action when you're dealing with that emotion, because then you will react instead of respond,
Yeah.
right? So then you're going to be present with the emotion. You're going to let it pass through the body, and bring the awareness, the gift of like, okay, what is this I'm wanting to actually create, right?
Yeah.
How is
Yeah.
this actually going to serve me? And then once you've been present with all the emotion and it passes through, and you're present with the stories, right? And you recognize the stories as false and untrue, and you're still just being there, being there, being there, then the state of being can happen.
Mhm.
Excuse me, I said that wrong. A shift in your state of being can happen. And then you can take the action. The action will naturally flow in a way that actually serves you when you're in a good place, right? When you're in that more aligned place with the truth of your being.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
One of the tools, and I don't want to get into it a lot today because it could be a whole other podcast, right? And that is the power of questions in helping you to shift into
Mhm.
that new state of being, right?
Yeah.
So so when I've got something coming up, and I did just this morning, right? I woke up and I was dealing with a little bit of fear and this and that and the other. And so I did this and my whole process, and I'll list the process out for people, right? You be present with the feelings. You recognize the story. You recognize the story is false, as untrue, or the judgment, right? None of that is real. So you're present with the emotion. You're present with the belief system or the story, and you feel that, and you be present with that, and you hear yourself, and you're like, and you bring that compassion like you were saying, right? And then after that kind of passes through and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I can feel there's some relief going on, then I move right into
Mhm.
questions.
Mm.
The questions I'll move into is like, okay, how could this turn out better than I could ever imagine, right? Or what do I need to know about this to create what I really truly want? How can this experience actually fuel me to move me forward? And I'll ask maybe 10ish questions, and by the time I'm done asking those questions, I'm already into a state of being that's more in alignment with where I truly want to go, versus
Mhm.
back with my old stories.
Mhm. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. And getting into that more in another one is going to be
Yeah,
fire.
questions needs to be a whole podcast all on its own, because
Oh,
it's
yep.
too big.
It's so
It's a lot.
powerful and
It
so
is a
good.
super powerful one.
Yeah, it really is. It really opens things up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that I'm doing pretty well over here. That
Yay.
was really good advice. I forgot that I mean I tend to forget a lot that not to take action from the feeling, to not react from it
Yeah.
and just be present with
Be
it.
with it.
So that's good
Yeah.
because I probably would have taken action out of it today, but
Mm.
I'm aware of that today now.
Good, I'm glad. Instead, you get to sit with that inner child that's feeling
Hmm.
all those feelings, and you get to
Hmm.
listen, and you get to love her, and you get to support her and be with her. and bring that compassion and understanding, and like, you're just human, honey, stop being so hard on yourself, you know. And when you can do that for your little inner child, what's life going to do for your inner child? Your life
Right.
is going to mirror back to you that it is there for you.
Yeah.
When you are there for you, life will be there for you. Money
Yeah.
will be there for you. Other people will be there for you because that's your mirror.
Yeah.
And we could go into that one in a whole other
I
month.
was just gonna say the mirror thing's a whole nother thing too. We got a lot of juicy stuff to talk about.
We sure do. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Hey,
Well, I think this is good.
hey, it's a wrap then for today.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for anybody who's joining our Thacia and Rinna conversations.
I love that.
All right.